Alright, so on this final chapter we're just going to clean up the model a little bit, and then we're just going to put a rig on it. We're going to use the same settings that we used in the first DVD, so we don't have to worry about doing all the weights and everything again. So right now I'm just combining the objects that I know can just be one element. Stuff like the clothing for the torso and the body, things like the pants, and then all the additional stuff like the holster and the satchels and stuff that might in rigging need to be separate objects for their movement. But for now I think we can get away with just having them all as one object, just for the purposes of skinning. I'm also going to combine these a lot of these materials so that they're all on one material list. The skin should be on one, and then the clothes and everything are also on one. This is mostly just for ease of use, but also for we don't just put them all as one multi-sub object because it makes it a little hard to deal with, especially when you have a lot of textures on a character, especially guys with armor or weapons and stuff like that. So here I'm renaming everything really quick, making sure it's all nice. And then we're just going to start now that everything's clean, we're going to put a biped in the scene. It's not showing up. We're going to have to... We had bone objects being hidden right there, so we got to clean some stuff up because I was actually drawing a couple of them here. So I'm just going to type star.bip, or just star.bip, and that'll select everything. Basically, whenever you type an asterisk or a star and then whatever letters, it'll select anything up until that and so long as it fits that. So anything with the BIP letters, even if they have a lot of other stuff added to them, it's okay, it'll select all of those. So I'm going to group all these. It's good to put your rig and your BIP files and everything on a separate layer. Then put your body on a separate layer, and then put the hair on a separate layer as well. That way it's really easy to organize and move around. We use something called the onion at work, but any kind of layering system is fine to use just to keep things a little bit more organized. You can see we have everything named pretty nicely as well. Did that in the last DVD for a little bit. Okay, so since we loaded, when we went to the fig, went into fig mode on the BIP that we drew in the scene, we were able to just load in the actual pose that we had before, which also has all the different segments for the fingers and all that. So it's really quick. We can just put it on the body that we have. Now here you can see I went to the load under advanced parameters of his skin, and I loaded in the skin, the envelope settings that we had on the body in the first disc. See that load file right there? You just click on that and you can load your BIP file. You can also load your poses as well, so we can make sure it all merges okay. Now because this might bring in a few objects and I want to make sure it's not hard to select, I'm just going to give them kind of a random weird name so I know the material. You can see here, turn off auto key, we don't need that on right now. It duplicated all the hairs if you look on here. This will sometimes happen when you bring this stuff over because things were parented in the old rig. So just to quickly select it, we'll be had they not been parented, we wouldn't have had this problem. But the problem is pretty easily solved by just looking in here and finding the hair that we have. The stuff that we know we're not using. Once we did this whole disc, we changed the hair to a more brown color, so I know that hair is incorrect. So I'm just going to go select these. You can see we got rid of almost all of them. In fact, we got rid of all of them. So now these are just the bad guys, and we can just kill them. And because we did good naming conventions, all I have to do is that star, hair. That'll select all the hair objects. Anything with the name hair in it will be selected. So we're going to hide that. We just want the shapes on. There we go. So we'll hide those guys. And under environment settings, we can see we have these two different things that got merged in when we brought the hair over. These are from the old. I'm going to try and just paste the same modifier I'm using on the body. Sometimes it'll work okay, but we can see this is not how it looked in the previous one. So we had a separate skin setting, envelope setting on the jacket in the previous chapter. So we're going to have to go into our old file and grab that and remerge it. Probably for the gloves too. They'll probably look pretty funky. Then we'll go back out of here. Yeah, those gloves are, they sure aren't holding up too well. So we're going to trash that. Trash that. Trash that. Go back into the fig mode. And save the file just because we've done a little bit of work that we want to keep. You can see I'm going all the way back to the very first file we started with before we did the UVs. This was actually the most cleaned up version of the character that I had. But it still has all the skin settings and everything on it, so we can just save these files out. I'm going to show you how we do that right now, as soon as it loads. It's a good thing we saved, because Max crashed. Okay, here we go. So this is that file. This is the untextured character. Taking all this off, and I want to save a settings that we have on here. So under advanced parameters, I want to save. I have a folder called rigs just to store this stuff in. This is the envelope file right here. I'm just going to title it jacket envelope so I know. These are the glove envelopes. Body envelopes. We didn't really do too much other custom stuff here, but we'll save this anyway. Even though we didn't tweak this too much in the previous disk. Did do a little bit on the foot, so now it's just a matter of going to the skin deformer, adding our bones, making sure we're in fig mode, then just so we can double check back and forth. I wanted to unhide a bone so I can bounce back and forth here. We're just going to load the jacket envelopes, and there's a couple options here that you can do. Some of this stuff we just don't need. You'll see it doesn't line up, the names. There's a match by name button we can click, and we can see that the biped file that I made here had a few extra bones that weren't being used on this guy. But because we're not doing anything for animation here, and we're just kind of putting his arms down, I'm just going to let it slide. You can see it doesn't deform the jacket nearly as badly as it was before. So we're going to do the same exact thing here on the body. On hiding the biped file. We got to make sure that we have all of these unhidden so that we can add them on the skin modifier. And there you go. And then we're loading these, matching by name. We don't need the vertex data because we didn't do any vertex weighting, so We look at these two. You can see the body definitely holds up a lot better than it was before. And then we'll do the exact same thing on the gloves and any other parts that we need to use. Now, I haven't added any bones here, so this is where I'm getting a little... There's no current envelopes. Now, if you don't have any envelopes on it, obviously you can't merge the two files, because it's just going to compare the two to figure out where the envelope should go. And when we go match by name, and go back into animation mode to look at this, you can see the gloves don't deform. It does deform a little bit oddly, so we're going to have to adjust the weighting on this. And we could just go save out the other one, but this is such a simple piece and by itself. Now at this point we could actually delete all the other bones except for this this forearm bone, because that's really all that's going to be driving this. And if we wanted things to speed up a little bit, we would do that, but it's okay to keep it on for right now. So then we're just going to add something to the pants. We just want to get that hair cap. And then we want to get all of the hair splines. We can hide by everything by there. Hair views right there because it'll actually parent to them. So we got it onto the hair cap. Now when we move the hair cap, everything should follow that, and then we're going to grab the hair cap and have it follow the head bone, so that when we move the head bone, everything follows. We'll do the same thing with the eyes now. And then since he has a little bit of a pose now, and that kind of pierces around. I want to add that turbo smooth. The same. I'm going to grab all of them and then add the turbo smooth so that it's all using the same one. So if it sort of slows down too much, we can do off in viewport and it'll affect everything, which is what we have it on right now. Let's take a look at this pose that we have here. By grabbing that null that we have our lights and our camera parented to, we can rotate it around and keep the body in the same place, and then have basically a quick turned off when we did some of this merging. Sometimes it'll do strange things like that, so make sure you're keeping an eye on what's happening in your scene. Yeah, and see, here I had a couple little problems here and there, and I could just add an edit poly on these and kind of tweak this stuff to where I want it. actually already auto-grouped each object into its own thing. So by Control-Shift clicking on areas, we can bounce right into hiding everything but that, or inverting that selection. And I can fix up some of these areas that were bothering me. All these areas where things are piercing through. I'm just running a quick smooth on that area. Some of the wires kind of flash on and off. I'm not sure if that's a common problem or if it's something to do with my graphics card, but I've gotten used to it. So we're just going over this whole thing and kind of seeing areas that we think we could tweak up and make look a little bit nicer. Don't want to do anything too major. We don't want to change the form of the guy, but areas of the rig just doesn't handle too well. We can fix really quick here without having to re-rig him or adjust envelopes anymore. Because that's really not a... It just takes more work to get the results that you want when all you're really trying to do is one pose. Before you do any of this though, make sure that this is the final pose you're going to be using. Otherwise, you're just kind of wasting time. Just smoothing out areas that got pinched. Alright, we fixed up a lot of little areas, but some of this wrinkles got a little strange here. Just gonna move these around to keep it looking a little less like the rig has deformed it so much. And some of this stuff I'm keeping in mind to notice that it's stuff that I should actually change on the real model as well, but for now it'll be okay just to do it on just this posed version. And by Control-Shift clicking on an object that we have, I'm able to hide everything but that. And Control clicking will mask them off. Want to have a little bit more droopness there. All kind of subtle stuff that you might not notice if we rendered it out, but I would. And if you can fix it quickly, why not? Okay, fixed up a lot of these problems. Then you can maybe give the guy a little bit of an expression as well if you wanted to. Maybe a little smile or grimace in his face or anything you wanted depending on the character. So I'm thinking maybe doing a little bit of a look, but we may end up just going back to the normal. Now we're ready to go back to max. We've done all these little edits. Nothing too major, all really pretty subtle, but it goes pretty quick to do this all in ZBrush. The other problem with doing it in max is that you have to do it on every single object. Here we can do it on everything at once really fast. No slowdown. Okay, so I still notice a few areas I don't like. So it seemed like his shoulder was moving without actually moving his back at all, so pulled that out a little bit. And then these last little details in here. So we've done a million renders testing how the materials look and making sure the lighting was good. So this is really the last step. We've posed him. Well, the second to last step. The last step is taking it into Photoshop and just giving it that extra little once over. But first we're going to merge in body to fix 2. Move them off to the side. And what I like about doing these things as morph targets is that if we did too much in ZBrush or even not enough, we can use a morph target just to fade it in and fade it back. You can also do it on selections. Okay, so that looks good. Now because I believe he had a few different areas where the polygons weren't all quad and the vert count got a little bit changed on his body, so I'm not able to use that as a morph target. So my two options here are to one is to try and maybe merge it back in, but it probably is just the actual mesh is messed up. So but that's okay. We didn't do very much on the body at all. So, and if we really did a lot that we were proud of, then we could always just render out just that by setting some settings, or just finding the offending areas, fixing them really quick, and then just redoing the ZBrush stuff. It goes pretty quick. You can see we're putting the morpher above the skin modifier, because you don't want to do the morpher and then have the skin move that. It'll look pretty wild. We'll delete those things. I'm going to try one more time to merge that in and see if maybe we can get it to work. Just that one object though. Hoping it may have been an import error. Usually that's not the case. Almost never is that the case, but it's always worth a shot, right? It's not going to work. So we can either repaint the body after we do a few fixes, or just let it be. There's not too much that's bad on the body, so I'm just probably going to let it go. Go kill that. Killed the morpher. Oh. When adding modifiers, be careful not to grab the wrong one in a haste. Something like an edit patch is not the modifier you want to put on top. So we'll do edit poly. That's a little better. But I can add a little bit of that expression. Pretty much the only thing we did in ZBrush was adding a little bit of an expression. So maybe a little bit of a sneer on his mouth. And then lastly, what I like to do, well, pretty much lastly, I like to rotate the eyes so they're looking at the camera usually, or looking at something. Having them just look into dead space can be kind of boring. But I want to reset them later on, so instead of doing it just on the mesh that we have, I put an edit poly on top of that, and then rotate it into place, and then we just got to fix this because we were going to put a cloth sim on this, but that's not really needed right now, so we're just going to rotate it into place. And then the top one as well. Too much. You'll notice right here, it just barely kind of shows up. But I also like to do render spin arounds and all that, so in case we do that, it's good to make sure it's at least in the right place. And on some of my extras, you'll see that when we render stuff to submit to clients, we do a front, a side, and a back view so the client gets a full view. So here he is. Here's the final render in Photoshop. So here's what I normally do. I just grab the alpha. I always save as a target file. Copy and paste it above. I'm going to make two different layers. One, I'm going to run this unsharp mask on. This is Photoshop. Sorry, I kind of cropped the interface a little bit, but this is just on the sharpen. You can see what it's doing. It just adds a little bit of that edge to it, which is really nice, and pops it out all a little bit. You can see what the two of them look like when we toggle them on and off. But it might be a little too sharp overall, so we're probably just going to fade that down a little bit. About 80%. I want to run a little bit of a levels on him. Might be a bit much, but this is all right here. It's very subtle stuff, and we're just kind of playing to try and get a little bit of a look. You see, got this little bit of a black halo around his hair. So what I do is I just make a selection out of him, invert it, then erase some of this. Not very much major erasing going on. It's just kind of giving us get rid of that black kind of cartoon edge around him. You can do that for the whole body. So we're almost done. Lastly, I might just put a tiny bit of a screen, 10%, but don't think I'll put it on right now. So here it is. Here's the final image, basically. We have a little bit of a gradient with some noise in the background. We're showing him standing and a bit of a close-up of the face so we can send this to the client. They'd be able to see pretty much every detail that we wanted to get across in this character. Really thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed the DVD. If you have any questions, I'll make another one. There should be a lot of supplemental stuff on this disc that you can look at, and I have all the maps. Gonna have some files in there you can play with and take a look. So once again, I really hope you